Have you? Well, have you? Don't watch this. Do not watch this if you haven't watched yesterday's episode of the Fallout, because it's a two-part this week, so make sure you go check out the first episode where if your team's not discussed in this one, they're in that one, okay? But this one, we're going to be talking about who...
I'm not an owl!
May have bottled the top four. And has the top four race now truly begun? And other things that seem to tease things, but ultimately we're just going to chat about football. If you like football, this is the channel for you. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you enjoy it at the end, not yet, and importantly hit the notification bell. Right, the top four race has just become super interesting, although the top and the bottom is all pretty awesome at the moment, with teams bottling all over the league, tensing up and the butt cheeks clenching. We are going to discuss what the problems facing the challengers with only 4 points separating 4th, 5th and 6th. We are also going to discuss the unlikely challenger that could come out of nowhere and shock the league. Oakley dokily do. Let's do this. Wolves 1-0 victory against Spurs. The cock getting eaten by the Wolves. 0.52 XG for Wolves, 1.20 for Spurs, who were good in the first half, woeful in the second half, but that was because Liverpool made some smart changes. Now, there was one big difference between these two sides when they met at the weekend, and that was that Wolves took their chances and Spurs didn't, which is kind of unlike Spurs, to be honest, this season. There was a hint of luck for Wolves at times, I would say, with Spurs hitting the bar on two separate occasions, but offensively, they made their own luck. Did the Wolves. In the first half, Wolves didn't have a single shot, while Spurs had a total of 11 in the first half alone. But in the second half, as I alluded to, Liverpool showed his calibre as a manager by changing the system to a 3 at the back. He has been super impressive. I do think that's going to be like the lazy thing that people will go to. It's like, the manager's good, because they don't know much about Wolves. But in this example, the manager's good. Because he did. He made a very clear change to a 3 at the back. And it enabled Semedo and Otto to be higher up the pitch, which gave Wolves an outlet in attacking scenarios. But also it meant that they engaged Perisic and Porro higher up the pitch, which was really important because they were really dangerous in the first half. They used the width of the pitch really, really well, which made life difficult for the midfield of Spurs. Matching Spurs up man for man was also important in allowing Wolves to engage in counter-pressing, as they often went man for man. This was really important against Spurs because they aren't a side that will play through you and cut you open. And Wolves may have demonstrated a bit of a blueprint on how to beat Spurs through that effectiveness of their pressing. For Spurs, there were two big problems in this game that could also spiral into bigger problems if they don't put a lid on it quickly. Firstly, I know they hit the bar twice and were generally unlucky not to score, but when you're only creating 1.2 XG, you do leave yourself open to this happening, and generally they get themselves out of jail, Spurs, by having that quality, Kane, Kulusevski, whoever it might be. But also creating only 1.2 XG from a total of 21 shots is really, really worrying. Worrying to the point that I think when I saw it, I was thinking, how is that even possible? But when you have a look at the shot map, it becomes really evident as to how it happened, because only 7 of the 21 shots were inside the area. And from this 7, only 2 were on target. So the second worry for Spurs is how easy it is to play through their lines. This is a screenshot from the build-up to the Wolves goal. There are 3 big problems here. So first of all, it's that Skip is not applying enough pressure once he has engaged Moutinho. The second is because Skip has stepped up, it's broken the shield of the parallel double pivot, meaning it becomes really easy to play through. The third problem is the lack of awareness from Højbjerg, which is, again, unlike him. There are 3 players all stood in roughly the same area, but Højbjerg isn't aware of Jimenez due to having eyes on the ball rather than the man, and it's little things like this that will get exploited in the Premier League, and literally any team can do this to you because it's a pretty simple thing to do. And in particular, a team like Wolves, who do have a lot of intelligent footballers, they were able to unlock them. Brighton 4, West Ham 0, an XG of 3.7 to 0.33 for West Ham. Ouch! But Brighton are good. Brighton are good. We said it weeks ago. Brighton could get in the Champions League places. They could. Have they got the depth? Are they going to tense up themselves? Maybe. But they score goals. And they will slap another team 4-0. Guaranteed. Absolutely guaranteed. So you're not special, West Ham. I mean that in a way to make you feel a little bit better. Just like Liverpool wasn't a surprise, just like Everton wasn't a surprise, Brighton can pump absolutely anybody. There might have been some high hopes for West Ham fans heading into this one because, you'd won 4-0 recently yourself against Forest last weekend, and it was a decent showing. We thought you were kind of back. And actually against Man United, I thought in midweek we were really good as well, but anyone could get smoked by Brighton. Now, even before analysing anything, look, we could see that Brighton dominated this simply by their average positions compared to West Ham. The stats back it up too. Not only did they batter them on XG, as I've said, they also recorded 20 shots, 9 shots on target, 3 big chances created as well as having 60% possession. Brighton are dominating most games that they play. Brighton set up in an extremely progressive way. It's really lovely to watch. And most neutrals should really be backing them. And I certainly am. I would absolutely love to see Brighton get into the Champions League places. And it's on a little bit. The problem is we're all going to start looking their way. And that's when they might struggle. The beauty of Brighton is that they are able to create overload situations at the drop of a hat. And they sew it together like so lovely. Like fast-paced, intricate moves super quickly. This screenshot here is from the third goal. Now, during which Brighton played through West Ham's midfield and had 4 attackers waiting to receive the ball. The best thing about it was that the 4 attackers all knew which runs they were meant to make, and they worked in unison and they caused havoc. The even scarier thing, I think, when you're coming up against Brighton is that they are, it's just these players from nowhere. Like the recruitment. They introduced 19-year-old Paraguayan Julio Enciso and 18-year-old Facundo Buonanotte as substitutes, and they both came on, they both made an impact. Enciso was incisive, and hit the post as well with a screamer, whilst Bonanete claimed the assist for Welbeck's goal. Like, it truly is fascinating how they keep finding these players, in particular often from South America. They do seem to have a really strong network there, a scouting network. And having heard good things about them both, I think we may be watching future stars here develop in these guys because we've seen it before. West Ham simply couldn't cope with how well drilled Brighton were in their attacking tactics, and giving away a stupid penalty in the 18th minute doesn't help. And it meant that their game plan went out the window. This opened them up and made them really vulnerable in between the lines. Solly March constantly found space in the channel. March received a total of 14 progressive passes in this game. West Ham as a team only made 17 progressive passes amongst them all. The one thing I would say, again, is I think... So Brighton are a bit like... Back in the day, there was sort of the Fulham team with Damien Duff. And it was a team that you sort of went and go, well, we can beat Brighton. Well, we can beat Fulham. Oh, it's Fulham. Okay, well... And you get slapped. And then the sort of the ego of the big club... I'm not trying to kick you way down here, West Ham fans. But understandably, I think you look at Brighton, Everton look at Brighton, Liverpool look at Brighton, and they go, what? This can't be happening. This is a really good Brighton team. Really good. Now, taking that medicine alongside the medicine of the season for West Ham, fine. Like, you can go for David Moyes there. I get it. But, in isolation, anyone can get slapped by Brighton. Chelsea win football match. Chelsea won. Leeds 0. I mean, what can I say? QPR can't win a football match. Chelsea looked much better than they have in recent weeks with this performance against Leeds. Big game, needed to get something from it and just needed to find a victory. They had a clear strategy, it seemed, and the team was set up in a way that allowed them to execute it. Well done, Mr. Potter. The move to a 3-4-1-2 looks like it suited Chelsea, who are able to play forward passes with intent and with pace in this game. And whilst a lot of their chances didn't come off, I thought the approach play was a lot better, as it looked like the players knew what was being asked of them this time. They seemed to function that little bit better. I also thought the attacking trio of Sterling, Havertz and Felix worked really well to an extent because they had wing-backs supporting them, which again, I've seen Chelsea fans screaming out for. So, well done to Potter. Without the wing-backs, it would have been a lot easier for Leeds to make the pitch narrow and to squeeze Chelsea. But these screenshots here, they demonstrate how having that sort of extra option in attacking scenarios, it sort of carries that extra threat, but also an added option as well. I thought Ben Chilwell did this excellently on the left and constantly made runs into the box. Ben Chilwell received 18 progressive passes, more than any other Chelsea player. I think he was probably the most important player for Chelsea. His presence and willingness to make runs was essential in making the most out of the technical players in the middle of the pitch for Chelsea. And for ages now, Chelsea have been a side that have had too many players who want the ball to feet. And it only took one player, in this case, Chilwell, to improve Chelsea's attack. And the answer was so obvious. Whilst the problems aren't completely solved, and you've got a lot of players that want to play as wingers, which could be a problem down the line, this should hopefully show that Graham Potter has a few answers there and he can salvage the scenario a little bit. Although, yeah, I need to see a few more performances before you can truly believe it. And again, you're going to have to try and get everyone game time, which is a problem. The only problem for Chelsea is that their goal once again this season came from a set piece, not open play. This has been the case a few times and I think it just doesn't fill you with confidence. So very tentative improvement from Chelsea. For Leeds, I thought they never looked like they really were going to sort of get anything from this game. The player who came closest was probably Meslier, who went up for a corner at the end to try and sort of salvage something for them. I think the biggest problem for Leeds was failing to get shots on target. Meslier had their second shot on target in the game, which came in the 94th minute. And for those of you who somehow don't know, Meslier is the goalkeeper. Nottingham Forest 2, Everton 2, 0.84 to 1.7 when it comes to XG. This was arguably one of the best games of the weekend. Absolute belter of a game. I really, really enjoyed it. And the desire to sort of patronise just because it wasn't, tappy. No. I enjoyed it. It was surprisingly end-to-end, with both teams having a real go at each other. Prior to the game, both sides had only scored 35 goals between them, and I think many were expecting a tight game, but it wasn't. Everton came out of the blocks really quickly. They played with a false 9, which was interesting, and what resembled a 4-3-3. So there was a guy on Twitter, whoever you are, I'll give you plaudits. I thought it was guaranteed to be a 4-4-2. Dyche has not done that as of yet, probably because of the attacking problems, the lack of a striker. And maybe he will come back to it. But the false 9 with Demarai Gray, it was really interesting for Everton because he started as a striker and perhaps sort of showed an aspect of his game that not many thought he had. He worked his socks off and he was more of a pressing forward over a false 9, it turned out. This worked really well at times, but he did tire towards the end, which I think gave Forest more of a foothold in the match. But in the first half, they were really good. Ben Godfrey was at left back. It was also something new for Everton. Godfrey played there under Ancelotti, and I think many think it's the best option at left back for Everton at the minute. Again, it offers more size as well. And I think if you've got Demarai Gray in the team and you're trying to get crosses into the box, again, from corners, it's great to have someone like Godfrey. But I think what you're seeing with Demarai Gray is that he's kind of weirdly, it's like the opposite of what you would normally see for a team. Normally you'd have that, say like Crystal Palace, you've got all these, ballers and dribblers in midfield and then a big guy. Actually, for Everton, it's the opposite. You've got a guy who can kind of get on the ball, maybe in the half spaces, maybe get on it and turn and play out wide. And then you can flood the box with Onana, Doucouré, less so Godfrey, but maybe, you could allow him to as well. Flood bodies into the box. And that's how Everton will score goals with their size this year. That is what's going to keep them up, I think. Godfrey, for the most part, defended really well and allowed McNeil to stay higher up the pitch. I think this was important in making sure that the 4-3-3 didn't become a 4-5-1. Godfrey made 2 tackles and 3 interceptions, as well as winning 3 out of his 5 aerial duels, which you would expect. It's something that Mykolenko constantly suffers with, which is a shame, but again, horses for courses, I think, when it gets to this stage of the season with Sean Dyche and how tight it is down there. For Forest, there was one player who shone brighter than anyone else on the pitch. We've been speaking about him all season long. We told you he was good enough for the Premier League. He is proving it. Brennan Johnson. It was a good day for Brennan Johnson, who looked like he was going to score every time he got the ball, certainly around the box. His second goal was amazing, just so composed. Not only was it an excellent finish, but it also demonstrated his intelligence as a forward. He allows the Everton defence to drop off, which creates that space for him to be able to get that shot off. Instead of making a sort of direct run, he bides his time and it brings the rewards for him. Forest still haven't lost a home Premier League match since the World Cup, and it looks like it will steer them to safety. Devastating for Everton to not get those 2 points, which could be crucial at the end of it all. They've got Brentford next week. That's the next game for Everton. They have to improve defensively if they are going to get anything from that game. A game that they will be desperate to get something from. Huge, huge game for them. And the Premier League is really hotting up now. Boom! Hello, friends. Welcome back to the James Lawrence Allcott channel. Hell you what? An intense weekend. Incredibly intense. So intense that we're going to have a look at every Premier League team this weekend on the Fallout. 2 episodes, bumper edition for you to enjoy.